Alright, so we just saw the AFL draft wrap up on Thursday, and I've given it a day to go over a bit of a review, seeing how every AFL club went in terms of what draft picks they selected. I was covering it through my live streams on day 1 and day 2, so I thought I'd give my little take on how I think every club did. However, I'm not going to give a grading just because I feel like during the draft, it's really hard to give teams a grading because we just don't know just looking at based on paper. So, for example, pick 61, for all we know, could it turn out to be a better player than pick 1? Probably not. But that's just the way of the draft. So instead, I'll probably just go through at the end my big winners and big losers and just see how I think certain teams did. And quickly, before we dive into it, my sources are telling me that 52% of the viewers watching the channel haven't subscribed yet. We're really close to the 42k mark. I'd love to square the ledger to 50%. Please hit that subscribe button. It'd be really, really good. Just get on with it, you dickhead! Let's go through the clubs in alphabetical order. We'll start off with Adelaide, and they drafted pick 4, Sid Draper, and pick 59 at Tyler Walsh. Sid Draper is going to be an absolute star for the Crows. There would be very few Crows fans that'd be upset with this draft haul, to be honest. Yes, they just got the 2 picks, but they, I think, nailed pick 4. He's a South Australian talent as well, the best South Australian talent by a landslide in this draft class. And there were a few people saying that he was in the conversation of potentially being the #1 draft pick. Like, he's explosive, he's a tough midfielder, and Adelaide, it addresses a bit of a list need for them for sure, because I still think they've got some midfield worries, and with the fact that he's South Australian, no worries about him having to go home or anything like that. We're moving to the Brisbane Lions, and how can a team that just won the premiership be handed so many gems? It's almost a little bit unfair with the way they've hacked this draft once again. Levi Ashcroft they picked up, Sam Marshall and Ty Gallup. All of these selections have either been father-son selections or Brisbane Lions Academy plays, which is crazy. Ashcroft, the father-son. Arguably, some are saying he's better than his brother, Will Ashcroft, who won a Norm Smith last year. I mean, it's crazy. Obviously, you see his highlights, and he's just an absolute star the way he wins the footy. And then Sam Marshall again. He probably would have been picked up a little bit higher as another really silky midfielder, smooth moving, and he got best on ground in the Coates League Grand Final for the Dragons. That's 2 elite level midfielders right there for Brisbane. And then they also picked up Ty Gallup, who definitely was a massive bolter, but ultimately for Brisbane, like, if I have to say a side that won, they would have to be in the top 3. Like, for where they finished last year. Now, Carlton, they did trade up for pick 3. They got it from West Coast, and I think it was a smart decision because of the talent that they had available. And Jagger Smith is one of the best prospects out there. Absolute jet. He could have been #1 according to the draft rankings that I have on screen. I think this is like end of October on ESPN. The best ball-winning mid in the draft class, averaging 30 disposals in the NAB League. He's going to make an immediate impact despite the Blues already having a pretty solid midfield. I think he'll probably play round 1. Harry O'Farrell as well. I think Carlton also did well to pick him up because if it wasn't for the fact that he was injured for most of 2024, I heard some sources saying that he could have possibly been a top 10 draft pick as a key defender. It had definitely addressed a bit of a list need. And because no teams bid on the Camporelli twins before that, they also ended up with the 2 Camporelli twins in Ben and Lucas. And who knows what we could see in the careers out of the Camporelli twins. Could they surprise and become absolute stars? I mean, it's exciting for Blues fans, considering that they obviously finished in the finals the last 2 years, picking up some really good talent. The next club is Collingwood, and as you can see, they had to wait quite a while longer for them to make their first selection, and that was Joel Cochran, who I thought was going to go to Sydney because he was a Sydney Swans Academy player, but for some reason the Swans, who would probably be in need of these key defender players, didn't elect to take him, and he's gone to Collingwood. That was probably a bit of a surprise for Collingwood fans. They picked up Charlie West and Will Hayes, who I rate quite a bit actually from what I've seen, really fast, reminded me of Darcy Jones. Yes, they've got quite a lot of late selections, the Pies. They've obviously traded out of this draft class to want to prioritise plays over picks, which I think could hurt them down the future if they don't start worrying about their youth, because I think their youth is a bit of a worry, especially over the next couple of years. Even though they're not the highest rated picks, I think it's quite important for Collingwood to at least nail 1 or 2 of these selections, because if they don't, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Pies, you start seeing them make a big fall down the ladder. Next up with the Bombers, and they gone for a bit of variety. They went for a forward, ruck, defender, some mids there. They obviously landed Isaac Keiko. That was their first selection at pick 13. They probably shouldn't have traded away their number 9 pick, I think it was, to Essendon. It ultimately didn't end up having to matter in terms of matching the bid. So a bit of a disgrace in terms of what they did there, the Bombers, but how they have known. Keiko should still be an absolute weapon. Let's not understate that. He's got similar traits to someone like a Nick Watson. He'll be a really exciting X-Factor type player, probably the best small forward going around that obviously any team could have picked up. So he's going to be a bit of a cult figure, I feel like, Keiko. Big news for Bombers fans, and it certainly addressed a bit of a list need as well, because they don't really have that type of pressure forward who can really go up front and kick some goals. They've also recruited Cale Girin as a ruck in pick 37. They wanted Jobe Shanahan, but he got picked up a little bit earlier at the West Coast Eagles. So they went for Cale Girin. He can play ruck. He can also play a bit of a key forward role, who I think Bombers probably do want a key forward. Angus Clark as well, Reece Unwin and Zach Johnson. A couple of decent gets here. I think certainly, Keiko is going to be a big excitement for Bombers fans in years to come. Alrighty, let's take a look at Freo's selection. So they went with the 3 picks. Not really the most interesting selections. I mean, Murphy Reid I think's a pretty good get. He was the best midfielder available from where they had their pick. I know they were really after Joe Berry, who was considered the best small forward in the draft class. They unfortunately couldn't pick him up because he was already taken. So they went with Murphy Reid, best midfielder available. I think he'll certainly provide them with a bit of polish, even though the Dockers probably don't need midfielders as much as some other clubs. Charlie Nichols as well, pick 34 as a key forward. Now, I know the Dockers probably also don't need key forwards. However, he's a bit more of a, raw key forward. So he'll probably take a little bit of time to develop. And you've got obviously Tracy and Miss that are coming through at the moment. So I think overall the Dockers didn't do heaps, but at the same time, I think that a couple of these players could turn out to be pretty good for them. Geelong is the next team on the board, and just like Collingwood, waiting a while to get their first selection, but the Cats are never really a team to get too many high draft picks normally, but they seem to somehow nail the really random selections. So it wouldn't surprise me that one or two of these players could turn out to be real stars. Pick 44 is their highest pick. They picked up Jay Polkinghorne, who's a key forward. A lot of people are rating this guy. He impressed as a smaller key forward at Norwood. Jacob Molly was selected as their ruck position, who was a big surprise because everyone thought they were going for Alex Dodson, who was rated higher. As you can see, with their ratings, the Cats, they haven't got a single player that ESPN thought were going to be top 50. So that doesn't necessarily mean that none of these players could turn out to be stars. We saw what happened with Lawson Humphreys last year. I think Tom Stewart was a high draft pick as well. So it certainly wouldn't surprise me at all if, a couple of these players turn out to be genuine stars and pick up a few All-Australians along the way. Bit of a quiet one for Gold Coast, obviously, despite picking up Leo Lombard. Good get. Gold Coast Suns Academy pick. He was actually rated pick 6 as ESPN's power ranking. So Lombard looks to be an excitement machine for the Suns. He's explosive. He had a dominant season at the Allies, and he's a goal-scoring midfielder as well. In a Gold Coast midfield that I feel like already seems kind of stacked. You got Miller, Rowell, Anderson, throw in Lombard, and hopefully in the years to come, the Suns could actually start becoming a really good side and maybe contending for first finals, but then maybe a premiership down the line. We moved to GWS, and they were a very interesting team. They probably went against the grain with a lot of their selections. As you can see, a few of them were considered bolters. I mean, Harry Oliver, probably the best rated player. Pick 18, they went Hannah forward. Pick 19, Harry Oliver, a defender. Angrove in the 24 selection as a forward. Obviously, as you can see here, a lot of their selections, they definitely went for the more smaller type plays that they've been seeming to draft as of late. It seems like that's the way the Giants want to go. They want to just cause chaos inside the forward 50 with a lot of runners. In recent years, recruiting Darcy Jones, Phoenix Gothard, they've got Toby Green, Bedford. They got a lot of those types of plays. The Giants, they certainly went a little bit different with some of these selections. Even Harry Oliver, not a key defender. They did go at pick 71, the final selection of the draft, in securing Logan Smith, who was an All-Australian ruck in the Coach League. So the fact that he got picked up at 71 is a steal. He was a Giants Academy player as well. It's hard for me to grade GWS because I've gone against the grain. Some are liking this, some are thinking this is a bit silly. The Giants also went well. They drafted iShow Speed. He's got some awesome physicality with his tackle and speed. What? Who knows? I really do not know how these players are going to turn out, but I actually am quite excited to see how the Giants go in 3 or 4 years' time when we take a look to see how these selections end up for the Giants. Hawthorn, no action really. Quite uneventful, as majority of their work went into acquiring the likes of Tom Barrass and all that. They picked up Noah Mraz at 35, a key defender that some were scratching their heads over because obviously they've already picked up a couple in the trade period, but I think for future, this is a good selection. And I think the Hawks, what they really wanted to do, since most of their areas in their list are quite stacked already, just pick up the best players available. And I think that's exactly what Noah Mraz was. Best player available. Soon down the line, Barras is going to be gone. Sicily won't be there. So hopefully for Hawthorn's sake, he can be their replacement, fitting quite nicely. And I think he can. Now, the D's were an eventful side. They originally did have the 2 picks in the top 10. They moved to 6 and 11, and they went for 2 midfielders. Harvey Langford is an elite, big-bodied midfielder. He's going to be the ball of the midfield, win you a lot of clearances, get the footy out and extract it. While Xavier Lindsay, he's more of that running midfielder with a bit more of a tank, kind of similar to like a Zach Merritt. That's what they've been saying. They ended up with 2 high-quality midfielders, probably the 2 best midfielders available for Melbourne. All these new midfielders the D's are picking up, that's the new wave of talent in the midfield for Melbourne, because obviously obviously Petrarca and Oliver, they won't be there forever. So exciting times for the D's to see if they can nail a few of these selections. They're looking quite promising, and I think youth is certainly the way to go for the D's. North Melbourne's up next, and they did okay, but also did some silly things. So they were a very interesting team. If you watch the draft, you'd know why I'm saying that. Finn O'Sullivan, they got at pick 2. I know the rankings say he was 5, but maybe these rankings were a little bit off, because I think after obviously Richmond getting Sam Layla, he was the next best available pick, I would have thought, Finn O'Sullivan. So even though North have like 100,000 midfielders now, young mids in their team, it doesn't hurt going the next best available young midfielder. I know North Melbourne were interested in possibly, trading down the table and maybe getting a few more picks that aren't necessarily midfielders, but they probably just were better off doing what they did here. So as you can see, they got Matt Whitlock at 27, Luke Urquhart and River Stevens, who was a father-son deal, but the Whitlock trade was silly, I think, in my opinion. I'm not saying that Matt Whitlock doesn't look promising. It's the fact that they thought that they could just get away with trading away their future first-round draft pick to Richmond for pick 27. That, to me, sounds like they were really desperate for a key forward. They could have gone about it in a bit of a different way, I would have felt. Because North, do they really think they're going to finish high next year in the ladder? They've pretty much finished bottom 2 for the last 4 seasons. What makes me believe that they're not going to escape the bottom 4? So basically what this is them giving away a future pick in the top 5 for a player who's rated pick 27 in Matt Whitlock. Obviously, it shows that North were extremely keen on this bloke. However, it puts an enormous amount of pressure on Whitlock to perform, because if he ends up being a bust, what a waste this would have been, especially next year if they do finish low again and it ends up being like a 2nd or 3rd pick. Now, Porter up next, and I thought they did quite decent in terms of drafting a few bolters. They got Joe Berry, Jack Whitlock, who is the brother of Matt, and Christian Miraz. Joe Berry was that player I was talking about that the Dockers really wanted, and he was rated as the best small forward going into this draft class. I think he'll fit well at the power alongside Rioli. I could see him making a bit of an immediate impact, kind of like Josh Rochelle did at the Crows. A lot of Port fans didn't think that they needed Whitlock, considering that they already have a few key forwards developing. However, he probably should have gone a little bit higher. So pick 33 is certainly a steal. He was a slider, and I think when you have that and as available pick as a steal, you certainly just pick it up, because I think he can turn out to be a really good player, like his brother. And then Christian Miraz as well. He's highly touted. He's also going to fit into that midfield, even though the power probably aren't in need of too many more midfielders, given the quality that they have up there already. Richmond are up next, and I don't even need to say anything. Just look at all the selections that they've already acquired for me to go that they were the big winners this draft class. Let's be real. This is a stacked draft, and they have picked up a lot of beauties. They got the pick 1 and Sam Layla, who I think was the best rated player. Now, once again, the ESPN ratings say 4, but that's probably just because of how tightly nicked this draft class was. So many players could have possibly been pick 1, but he's going to be a beauty. I mean, they picked up 2-star midfielders, 3 key forwards. I thought was quite surprising. Not very regularly you would pick up 3 key forwards, but I guess if you're going to do that in any draft class, do it now when you've got an abundance of key forwards available. They got Luke Traynor, who I think will fit in very nicely alongside the likes of Gibkiss and Bolter. Jonty Ford was a bit of a bolter as a key forward, not the highest rated, but still should be a good talent. Taj Houghton they picked up. Josh Smiley was that other midfielder who is also rated in the top 10. So an abundance of talent. They had 6 first-round draft picks. We just crossed the page here. Harry Armstrong, key forward, rated a little bit higher than what he was selected. Thomas Sins, Jasper Alga. If this is the draft class where they nail a bunch of these selections, then Richmond are going to be a really scary side in the next maybe 5-6 years. Next up, we have my team, the Saints, and the Saints was certainly one of the more involved teams in this draft. Certainly a club here that really needed to nail their draft selections, and I think they probably have, although I wouldn't know. It's way too early to call. They went for their pick 8 and pick 10 for Toby Travaglia and Alex Taru. Travaglia was classed as a defender, but then some are classing him as a midfielder. I think he's going to be that sort of running halfback that might start in that running halfback position and then move into the midfield. So I think he's going to be eventually down the line a midfield talent. It does say midfield on the graphic, but I think he's more of a defender at the moment. And they also picked up Alex Taru. I think these are some really strong talents. Taru has the potential of being the best defender in the competition, I think, with his traits. Player who can intercept, take the high-flying marks, and he's got heaps of athleticism, so he's got a massive ceiling. And Travaglia as well, linked to the likes of Will Day. So I think in terms of talent, the Saints got the best 2 players, I think, on the board. I know my dad was really pissed off when he saw there were 2 defenders, but I think Saints fans can hold off their age at the moment. I think the Saints have actually done an alright job. Interestingly enough, they also won another key defender in James Barat. Saints fans do need to realise we are still in need of a couple of key defenders. Yes, our defence is quite alright, but we lost Battle. Howard won't be there for too long, so Not a bad idea to do so, invest in a few more defenders. Pick 53, Alex Dodson, the highest rated ruckman, who went at pick 53, one of the biggest steals in the entire draft, that is for sure. I think the reason a few clubs didn't want him was because of the fact that he didn't play any footy in 2023 because he had a strong basketball background, but he has a lot of upside as a ruckman, and I think he's going to develop very nicely. Him and Marshall can be a really good combo in the future, and the Saints are in need of another ruckman. So I think overall the Saints, hopefully we do well this draft. It's too early to call, but I think we've done all right. Sydney are up next, and it's hard for me to really judge because I don't really know a whole heap about some of these plays. I know Jesse Tatoli, he's one of the higher ranked plays. At pick 22, as a general forward, I think he can certainly play round one and make an immediate impact. For a Sydney forward line, they could certainly use a bit of a top-up in certain areas. Ned Bauman, I don't know heaps about. He was a massive bolter, another general forward. Bailey Rice, a bit of a mature-aged running half-back who I think could certainly be the sort of player that could slot right into a squad. And then they drafted Mac Andrews' brother and Riek Andrews, so he'd probably have a lot of athleticism. I don't know a lot about him. I don't really know how to judge it with Sydney fans. I guess that you guys probably know a little bit more than me down below. I thought they probably wanted to go a little bit taller, maybe get a key forward. That would have been possibly my say, but look, ultimately, Sydney would know their stuff a little bit more than me, so we'll see how they go. West Coast is up next, and I think they actually did quite well. Their first selection at pick 16 was Bo Allen, probably a player that was expected to be picked up a little bit earlier, so the fact that he is a local-born talent, the best WA talent going around, apparently by far, the fact that he's gone to West Coast at pick 16 is a pretty big steal. They got Job Shanahan, another steal, considering he was considered the best key forward going around. His ranking was 17. Gross and Grego, two mids that were considered sliders to some, so some pretty good talents as well. And then with their last pick, they went back to some local talent at 65 and Hamish Davis, who was another slider. So ultimately, West Coast, I think they did the best with what they had available. Maybe they could have used actually a defender now that I think about it with no Barras. But for the most part, I think West Coast did a pretty good job. Of course, the final club here, we have the Western Bulldogs with 5 draft selections. A few of these are kind of unknown when it comes to the power rankings. With their first pick, they went with Cooper Hines. Pick 20, he can play midfield, he can play forward. I think his brother went to the same school as me as well. He's in my class, so I know a little bit about him. He was captain for the Stingrays, and he looks to be really promising. That I think he could make an impact straight away, possibly round one in the Bulldogs forward line, maybe play that bit of that half forward role, kick a couple goals. I thought the Dogs were certainly a team that might have needed to address their defense. They picked up Lockie Jacks at pick 29, Josh Dolan at 31, Sam Davidson and Luke Kennedy. I'm not going to lie, I don't know a whole heap of these players, as with some of the other clubs. I'm sure the Dogs are capable of finding a couple gems out of this one because they always seem to draft well, the Dogs, in recent memory. And I think, once again, they could get some gems here. I think Lockie Jack is, maybe Cooper Hines, they're looking all right. So the Dogs, let me know, Dogs fans down below, how you think you went. All right, we've talked about all the clubs now. I'll try and go through some winners in my opinion. So West Coast, I'm actually going to put them in the ranks considering they didn't have a heap available, and I think they nailed pretty much everything they got quite well. I want to say St Kilda, but instead I'm probably just going to say Richmond. The team with 7 first-round draft selections is in the winners category. Wow, who would have believed that? And one of the most stacked draft talents of all time. Adelaide did pretty well, and I thought Brisbane, you have to throw them in the mix as well, considering they finished obviously winning the flag last year, and normally you don't improve too much in the draft the year after. They're going to improve a lot. I'm going to leave it up to the viewers, so let me know down below who you thought was the worst performing in the draft, and tell me how you think your team went. If you wanted to give your team a grading from what you know already with the information, feel free to do that. I will see you soon in my next video though. That'll wrap things up. I will be uploading tomorrow actually as well, so stay tuned for a little bit of a later upload, and I'll see you soon in the next video.